Hello again, I am Blunty. Pokemon Sword and Shield have just been unveiled, and as a man who has been playing Pokemon for 2 decades, ever since the first one, and a YouTuber and a streamer, I'm kind of duty-bound to make a video telling you guys what I think about it. So here we are. Unfortunately, I can't actually show you much of the actual reveal trailer and presentation and stuff because it seems Nintendo are just flat blocking those on YouTube. Actually, the Pokemon Company are flat out blocking it. Nintendo have gotten slightly better with their attitude towards YouTubers in general and stopped being colossal dicks about it. However, the Pokemon Company have gone in the opposite direction and started being huge dicks about it. I went through the same thing on the reveal trailer for Pokemon Let's Go last year when I used that to talk about it, and I just copyright struck it then. They're not copyright striking it now on this one, but they are just flat out blocking it. So even if I put a video up with that footage in it, you wouldn't be able to watch it anyway. So Pokemon Company, get your shit together. Don't you want people to talk about your game? Don't you want people to talk about how excited they are for a brand new RPG Pokemon game core series thing? Because we are pretty excited about it and we want to talk about it. And it's easier to do that if you just let us show and tell rather than just tell. So I'm going to be using some stills from the presentation. Hopefully they'll be okay. With that out of the way, let's start drilling down onto my reactions and thoughts and conjecture and expectations and things like that. I was very surprised that they've utterly changed the way they announce Pokemon games. For, 2 decades, it's been a very reliable rhythm. First, they tease it, maybe with the logo, maybe with some silhouettes of the starters, and then dribble out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Maybe they show a brief clip of gameplay, maybe it's a still from a location, maybe it's the map next, and then the starter reveal, and then a little bit more tease and tease and tease, and then they show the evolutions of the starters in silhouette form, and then they release that. And it's been very, very reliable sort of rhythm for decades now. And this one, they just threw all that out the window and went, hey, here's some gameplay. Here's what the starters look like. Here are their names right off the bat. And here's a bunch of gameplay. And here's the map. And all at once, just... So on the names of the game, Pokemon Sword and Shield, I like them. Straight off the bat, I like them. It's fine. I like the logos. There is one thing about the logos, though, and I've tried to avoid a lot of other people's reactions so far so it doesn't color my own, but I have watched a couple of videos, and neither of them mentioned this, so I don't know whether I'm the only one out there pointing this out or not. Probably not. Pokemon community are pretty attention to detail focused sometimes. But the little fox head kind of thing on top of each logo, I'm imagining that is alluding to the legendary for this game. Perhaps they're going to do what they've done a couple of times in the past with legendaries and have 2 different forms of the same Pokemon. One is an attack form, one is a defense form, Sword and Shield. So that would be my best guess about that. Can't wait to see it. Just some sort of dual mode, werewolf based, perhaps, although we do already have kind of a werewolf from Sun and Moon as well. So maybe a fox. Actually, if it's a lot of people saying, we'll get to this in a minute, but a lot of people saying the graphics and the style of the region looks a lot like England, so maybe it's a fox. Doesn't look a lot like a fox head, as far as I'm familiar with it, but a fox is the first canine type animal that you think of with England, isn't it? When we come to the graphics, I'm on board with that. I do wish they'd pushed it a bit further than they have. It's very, very clearly grown from the seeds of what they did with Pokemon Let's Go, which is a very simple and clean and crispy looking game. I love the look of that, but I wanted this one to look even fancier, and it does look fancier. There's a lot more detail. There's a lot more sort of textures and bits and pieces in the environment going on, but it doesn't look as fancy as I wanted it to look. So then again, we are still, this is early game footage, and although the general impression of the style from Pokemon Let's Go remained the same from the first preview to the end release, I played Pokemon Let's Go at E3 in their first live game preview kind of event thing, and it did look significantly worse than what the game eventually came out being. The textures look a lot better in the final release, and there's less aliasing and things going on. So hopefully the same process is going on here as well, so the game looks even crisper and cleaner. But I'm okay with the art style. Pokemon has never been the best looking game on the planet. Never has been. In any generation it always looks like maybe a generation behind as far as its graphical prowess and presentation. And that's fine. It's an RPG game. It doesn't need to look photorealistic, but I did wish it was going to look a bit better than this. I'm also disappointed that there appears to be no open world. That was sort of one of the first phrases out of people's mouths when you ask them, well, what would you like in a next generation Pokemon game that's based on a powerful console instead of a pure handheld and things like that? And most Pokemon fans out there, as we have been saying for about 15 years, we really want an open world Pokemon game in the style of Breath of the Wild or GTA. You can just go anywhere you want at any time, and the only gating mechanism is perhaps the local difficulty. You're not sort of just blocked off by invisible walls or trees you need to cut down, for example, or boulders you need to move and things like that. And that pulls into the map as well. The map they showed is very sort of linear up and down, and that makes me worry that the gameplay, the story progression is going to be very, very linear as well. They did move away from that for a couple of games. I think Black was one of the first ones where you could do multiple paths. You'd wind up in the same spot, but you could get there through a slightly different path. And I think X and Y was a bit like that to some extent as well. But this seems pretty linear and long and thin, and just move from the bottom to the top, and there you go. So it's even less open world than I would have liked from first impressions. Of course, we don't know. We're only guessing based on a small amount of evidence we're presented with, but it seems that way, and that makes me frown a little bit, because an open world Pokemon game would have been glorious. To roll into that, we're missing something that was introduced with Pokemon Let's Go, and that's the overworld Pokemon, being able to see the Pokemon in the world and just walk up to the one you want to catch or battle or chain for getting shinies or whatnot. People were really, really resistant to that idea at first. What the random encounters? You go to any video about those games and they're whining about random encounters and how that's the most important part of the game for them and stuff like that. And now it's back. People are whining that the random encounters are back and they would rather have Pokemon in the overworld, because we all played Pokemon Let's Go after we whined about it. Well, after they whined about it, I didn't. I was curious about it. And very, very much enjoyed being able to see the Pokemon in the overworld and just go, I want you, I want you, I want you. I don't want to catch another one of you. So that's a bit of a disappointment. And maybe that's the trade-off for the game looking as significantly richer as it does than Pokemon Let's Go versus having Pokemon in the overworld, because the Switch is, limited. It's not the most powerful thing out there. There's only so much you can do. So maybe to get the game looking schmick, we had to give up the overworld Pokemon. Or maybe they just decided that this being a core series game, they're going to stick to the core series mechanic that has been established for 20 years, as many people asked for in reaction to Pokemon Let's Go. So how do you feel about that? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. Random encounters have always been fun, but I really did enjoy the overworld stuff as well. Coming back to the look and sort of setting of the game, the sort of mix of open countryside and post-industrial kind of thing is very enticing as well. I don't think we've quite seen it presented like that before in a Pokemon world, so that's lovely and fresh. And of course, it reminds a lot of people of England or the UK in general, which is enticing. It's not the Australian based game that I've been wanting for years as an Australian, because I think it could be fun to have a game that's based in Australia, because all you would have was snake Pokemon and spider Pokemon and Kangaskhan and Kamala and every single type of poison type of Pokemon. That's all the game would be. Maybe next generation we get one in Australia, because all of the people and Pokemon from this new region, Galaga. Wait, I keep calling it Galaga. Where's my notes? What's the name of this place? Galgar. It's called Galgar. I'm going to call it Galaga so many times. I don't know, old schooler. But maybe a bunch of settlers and convicts and stuff get shipped out of Galgar and go to the new Australian region to tough it out in an ultra difficult, poisonous Pokemon game. As far as the starters go, I see a familiar pattern evolving. No pun intended on the evolving thing, but people are of very, very mixed opinions in the beginning, sort of hating on or loving the designs and immediately picking a favorite, even though we know almost nothing about them besides their look and their type, or at least a singular type. There's no hint of any of the starters being dual type yet, although I would, just on the impression of the bunny, Score Bunny, right? I'm still learning the names. He looks like he could be firefighting again. He's got that sort of attitude towards him. He's got that little Band-Aid thing, the hint of a Band-Aid across his nose, which in a lot of anime tends to represent a sporty or aggressive type. I don't know. But Skull Bunny is my favorite so far, just based on initial impressions of sort of the attitude presented and particularly the design. The other two, I think The designs are pretty basic. That's like the starting point for any Pokemon design, their big head and little animal body kind of thing going on. I do like the grass monkey thing. Grookey. Keep having to check my notes to remember the name. Grookey looks pretty cool. Not sure about Sobble. A water chameleon thing seems like an intriguing idea. I do wish he wasn't frowning all the time. Just makes him look a bit mopey. I don't want that. I don't want a mopey Pokemon. I want Trico. I want Totodile. I want that attitude. That's smarmy. So the reaction in general is positive, but kind of reserved and encouraged at the same time. I like what we're seeing so far. I lament some of the stuff we're missing that was introduced in Let's Go that I wound up liking far more than I thought I was going to like. I very much hope they don't bring back the motion control catching mechanic. I just want a traditional hit the button, throw the ball mechanic, but I do want those open world Pokemon back. And again, I'm sad it's not a proper open world Pokemon game. I don't know if and when we're ever going to get that, but we've been screaming about it for decades. Please, Game Freak and Pokemon Company, please! On that kind of note, we are yet to find out any of the side gimmicks that they always throw in. Every generation, well, from about Generation 3 onwards, really, has had a significant side gimmick of sometimes. Sometimes it impacted core gameplay directly. Sometimes it was just a little thing to do off to the side. Things like Pokemon grooming and training mechanics, or the beauty contests and things like that. There'll be things like that in this we know nothing about so far. So as it was presented, it's just a very pretty looking, but very, very standard mechanically Pokemon game. So how they're going to mix up the mechanics, if they're going to mix up the mechanics, I don't know. I hope they do. Because as much as people hate when they change stuff from the classic Pokemon formula, it does introduce something fresh, new, and interesting to learn and play with and experiment with for those of us who have been playing Pokemon for many, 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 many years. Of course, E3 is likely to be our next large information drop. We probably get a few dribs and drabs between now and E3. There might be a few more location reveals, or we'll get the names of more locations. We'll probably get a tease about the whatever antagonist we'll be facing, or team of antagonists we'll be facing, because we know nothing about that yet. What kind of Team X is it going to be, and who's going to be at the head of it, and what's the core conflict going to be about that we're fighting against? Is there going to be that? Are they going to go completely in a different direction, and we're working towards a goal to, I don't know. I'm kind of hoping for a traditional sort of evil gang antagonist kind of thing, because I always do enjoy that more than a group of happy, friendly people just with no real interesting conflict going on. Like a few games have had. Some of those games have been very good games and very fun, but the antagonists have been much less enjoyable than the others. Ruby and Sapphire have been some of my favorites as far as the antagonists go. That sort of dual evil team thing, sort of fighting against each other and me at the same time, and maybe they cooperate with us, maybe we're on the same side, maybe we're not. And the way all that threaded together was really very interesting. Much more interesting than, I love Team Rocket, of course I do, but much more interesting than the linear progression of Team Rocket. You just beat them up until they give up kind of thing. The Alpha Sapphire, the Team Magma, Team Aqua kind of thing was far more interesting, and I hope we get something like that again. But yeah, we'll probably learn more about what antagonists we're facing and what challenge we're facing in the world before E3. And then at E3, hopefully they'll do what they did with Let's Go, and we'll have some sort of on-hands playable thing. And hopefully if that happens, I get to go to E3 again. Those videos were kind of well received as well, and lots of exciting conversation happened around those videos as well. So I'm excited to do that as well. Again, because it's good for the channel, but also I want to play it as soon as possible because I'm a Pokemon fan, if you hadn't noticed. But yeah, what are the other things? I don't know, it looks like a fixed camera again, which is fine. They've been doing well with that fixed camera stuff in the last few games, where they give you interesting angles and things like that, and use the fixed camera to hide things in the world, so you have to go behind a bush to find stuff. And I actually like that. I'm not sure whether I want a free camera anymore, especially if it's not an open world game, of course. But yeah, that's my thoughts. That's my initial reaction. So let me know, as usual, in the down below area. Please go ahead and subscribe and hit that thumb button and hit the bell button, all that sort of stuff to help the channel, as all the YouTubers have to say. It's going to be real fun when YouTube finally gets rid of that like-dislike thing, because people dislike bomb stuff, and that's just, YouTube hate that. If they ever get rid of that, there's going to be a couple of years worth of videos with people begging for thumbs, and the thumbs aren't just going to be there. It's like in the old days when they changed from the star rating system to the thumb system. You go back far enough, you'll hear people going, oh, give this video 5 stars. And the stars just aren't there anymore. It's going to be the same thing with the thumbs soon. But I'm digressing. Thank you for watching. I am Blunty. And we'll catch you next time. And you got to catch them all. Got to buy them all, really. Games.